Well,
councillors, thank you for attending today, and it's the ordinary council meeting of the 24th of September 2020. And for the people who are watching the council meeting, I'd like to go around the table and introduce each of the councillors, starting with Councillor Anna Hart on the left-hand front there, Councillor Ryan Kennedy, Councillor Paul Madwick, Chief Executive Simon Bastian, Deputy Mayor David Carruthers, afternoon. On my right-hand side, Meg Smith, who's the Minute Secretary, Councillor Ian Hartshaw, afternoon. Councillor Jenny Cogan.
Hi.
Councillor Paul Davidson.
Hi.
And Councillor Jane Neal. So thank you, councillors, for attending. I would ask Paul if he would do the opening character, please.
He honore he korori he maunoro ki whenua paro pai ki ngā tangata katoa. I tō mātu I te rangi, whakapangi a mātu, I tō mātu hui. Arahina mai a mātu kōrero ki te hura tika, I tinga te mātu ki tama tuai o tapu. Amen.
Move on to item 2 on the agenda, which is the apologies. I have an apology from Councillor Martin and an apology for lateness from Francois. Are there any other apologies? None. Someone like to move that the apologies be accepted?
So moved.
Councillor Kennedy, seconded. Councillor Davidson, thank you. Those in favour? Now, the document for declaration of interest has been circulated on Team Systems. There's also an original here which will be circulated. And once again, if even if there's a perceived interest, it's really good to write it down to ensure that it's very transparent. I'll move on to item 4 on the agenda, and that's urgent items not on the agenda. Is anyone aware of any urgent item? Should be there. Okay. Move on to item 5 on the agenda, which is the confirmation of the minutes of the previous meetings. Now, the minutes have all been circulated on Team Systems. As far as I'm aware, there's been no request for any changes. So we'll move first to the extraordinary council meeting on the 21st of August 2020. Secondly, the extraordinary Chief Executives Review Committee meeting on the 25th of August 2020. And thirdly, the ordinary council meeting of the 27th of August 2020. Any discussion? Okay, would someone like to resolve the minutes are true and correct as per the resolution?
Accordingly, Your Worship.
Deputy Mayor Carruthers. Councillor Cogan, those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Also, can we confirm that the Chair approves his digital signature being added to the confirmed meeting minutes of the 21st of August 2020, 25th of August 2020 and the 27th of August 2020. And this is, as Council moves further and further online, it's using an electronic signature rather than Diane popping into my office and getting me to sign. Quite happy with that? We don't need a resolution, but if you could just make a note of that. Move on to item 6 on the agenda, which is the action list. I would ask the Chief Executive, Simon Bastian, to present the report. It's on pages 6 and 7 of your agenda.
Yeah, good afternoon, Your Worship and councillors. I'll take you through the action list point by point and give you an update on the current status. The community school cycle trial. Council engineers have finalised the crossing near community school. The electronic signs have been ordered, and the footpath, the signs will be installed and the footpath construction will commence following the fibre cable installation. Speed limits, you will notice that there's a report today in council regarding the consultation process we're wishing to undertake for the changes or proposed changes to speed limits on various local roads. The transfer of pension housing to Destination Westland, finalising the strategy document. That work is currently underway with the consultant and we expect to have that hopefully tabled for the October Economic Development Committee on the 29th of October. Carnegie Building Project, obviously we had our application for lotteries declined. I can confirm that I have been in regular contact with the Ministry and have had no indication to date regarding our further application to the Regional Cultural Heritage Fund that is likely to be declined, so reasonably optimistic that we will see a positive outcome. Just waiting to get that announced in the near future. In terms of Fox landfill, that process is underway through the PGF process, and give you a further update in the CE's formal quarterly report. EV representation around the council table, as indicated previously, we'll look to write a remit to LGNZ for the 21-22 AGM. That's not due for quite some time. Now, I would probably look to incorporate other West Coast councils in that with a consistent approach. Renew Woodstock Lookout, confirm that obviously this is our asset, and the district assets team have basically done the remediation works for the interpretation panels and also the works for the trail, the lighting trail. Still works to be done, placing a panoramic view. So I wish to request that that's taken off the action list. In regards to providing plans for the cycle trail to the Canary School, that has been completed and tabled for councillors. And the final point, a letter of acknowledgement to John Sullivan regarding his work for Harold's Creek. So that letter has been sent to Mr. Sullivan. Any questions?
Simon will open it for discussion. And
thank you, Worship. The Canary School cycleway, from the plans that we saw this week, and the crossing was to be where that old cutting used to be on the corner, along that sweeping bend. And I suggested that it would be better moved just down the road. It didn't really make much sense when we're very close to seeing the opening of that heritage information kiosk on the hall side. It would be
The challenge is ensuring a clear line of sight for traffic both ways. That was considered as the optimum positioning to ensure that there was a very clear line of sight for traffic both from the north and from the east and west. I can take that as review that again based on your suggestion.
Yeah, so I think perhaps if they could have another look at it, because I mean it's on a straight piece of road there. There's only a sweep around from the bridge, obviously. I just thought it'd be a more sensible place and safe. But if you could take another look, appreciate it.
Take your advice and come back to it.
Thank you.
Councillor Kennedy.
Just on the speed limits, and I know we're going to have a discussion later on, has there been any inward correspondence from the mandatory agencies regarding the consultation document? I mean, you've sent the information out to them, and have they returned any advice or?
Who was that, sorry?
The mandatory agencies, the police, the
Not yet.
GTA, and no, okay, thank you.
Councillor Hart.
No comments, thanks.
Councillor Newman. Councillor Davis.
No.
Councillor Berg. Go ahead.
Yeah, just a couple of things. The first is what Paul brought up about out at Canary. Like I lived out there with young kids for quite a long period of years, and I was just a little bit. I know you're saying clear line of sight, but having spent a lot of time kind of walking around that area, I was a little bit concerned about where it's positioned as well, because you might have clear line of sight, but by God, do the milk tankers and cars speed around that corner considerably. And yeah, especially if you're coming into town, you know, because you're kind of going up that bit of a rise as well. I would like, if it
Speed
could
limit's
be,
going to be reduced.
hey,
Speed limit's going to be reduced. I think that's pushing 100 k's, it's going to go down to 80, I think.
yeah, but even at 80, honestly, it's, yeah. I would just support if potentially perhaps further down where Paul talked about could also be considered. It's just that traffic, once, you know, you sort of hit round the garage and the pub area does tend to, I don't know why it is, but they don't tend to travel as fast as they do around that bend. And the other thing I just wanted to question about was just around the transfer of the pensioner housing with Destination Westland. So obviously, so that's to our benefit from a council perspective too for Destination Westland and...
So the decision to transfer is part of the strategy. So that whole process will be reviewed as part of the strategy where the best ownership sits.
Right.
So plus the financial impacts of both entities.
Okay, because we haven't looked into all of that
It's
properly.
quite a
have we?
detailed scope of work
Yes.
that can provide
So we'll be involved in...
the review of that.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Hunter.
Yeah, just for your worship, probably it'll be under the same concern as councillor Cogan and councillor Madrick, having lived in Canary for many years. I did think it might have been a bit better down towards the hall or down that way, but
We'll review that.
yeah, so that's my only comment, thanks.
Everyone happy with that? Thanks, Simon. Would someone like to move that the report be received and that the item on Renew Woodstock lookout and letter to John Sullivan be removed? Thanks, Councillor Neal. Second that. Councillor Hartshall, those in favour? Aye. Thank you. Move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the Graduated Driver Licensing Program. Down. Thank you. We'll place item number 7 on hold until the presenters arrive. Move on to item number 8, which is the staff reports. And first report is the financial performance for August 2020. It's on pages 8 to 17 of your agenda, and it's been presented by Prabhat.
Good afternoon, Rashid and councillors. I'll take the report as read. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you. Councillors, we will take the report as read and we'll go around the table. Do you, Mick Brothers?
No reports. It's an encouraging report. It is good reading. So good report. Thanks, Prabhat.
Paul?
No questions.
When are we likely to see the carryovers included in our financial report?
Your worship, I could answer that question.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm looking to get that onto the agenda for the October council meeting.
Cool, thank you.
Councillor Hart?
No, actually, I don't have any questions this time. Pleasing report. I have a couple of questions about audit later on, but we'll wait till we talk about that.
Councillor Neal?
Thank you.
Councillor Davison?
No questions, thank you.
No questions from me?
Questions?
Oh, very good report. It's very clean and certainly the cash position continues to grow and very encouraging. Would someone like to move that the council receive the financial performance report to August 2020?
Okay, so
Councillor Hart, do I have a seconder? Councillor Ryan, all those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. We might move to the Chief Executive's quarterly report. Now, it's on pages 18 to 34 of your agenda. And Chief Executive Simon Bastian will present it.
Yeah, good afternoon again, councillors and your worship. I'll take the report as read, but I'd like to cover off a number of points in the report just to highlight them as important pieces of work. And the first point I would like to talk about is COVID-19 and the impacts that we have both in the community and also within council. I'm pleased to say that council and staff particularly, have performed at a very high level through this whole process and managed the nuances of going through the various levels of COVID quite very well, particularly when we were all in total lockdown. So in terms of council's service to the community, it hasn't dropped off. In fact, it's been enhanced in some aspects. Obviously, the economic impacts will be considerable over time, particularly on the tourist industry, as we well know. A lot of that topic will be covered off in the Economic Development Committee processes. Mayoral Task Force for Jobs. This is a fund that has been utilised, come about through work from the Ministry of Social Development, a fund of 500,000. It's designed to support those impacted by COVID and up to 50 potential jobs that could be created through this process. The fund has enabled us to fund a full-time coordinator. So Charlotte has joined us and has started with a role and we've started really well in terms of, I suppose, linking unemployed to potential job offerings. At the writing of this report, we had to date contacted over 50 businesses and actually linked up 17 potential job seekers with potential roles. And that includes things like apprenticeship schemes, etc. So a great start and the team's well underway and linking well with other organisations as well, particularly Westrick, who have stepped up as well. Just want to cover off the Provincial Development Unit funding in a bit of detail. So the first one we have is the solid waste management. This is the Fox landfill, both the removal of the material and obviously the Butler's new landfill cell. So the Fox landfill itself, we've already engaged contractors, a number of them involved in this aspect, but GHD consultants are leading the extraction plan for the project at Fox. And we have a number of consultants working alongside them. We have Golders who did the original assessment work for the Ministry of Environment, consulting us in terms of environmental investigations and site validation works. So we expect to start that work very shortly once the contract is formally signed and let. Butler's landfill, we're working on the design of this with Stantec, and this is a reasonably straightforward process. Working alongside the regional council also for the next round of consents that we will be requiring. The third phase of this is obviously the final, part of the final river, Fox River remediation, which will clean up. So we're working alongside Fox Glacier Guides who we've approached to take the lead on this project on our behalf. They were meant to have met yesterday, but we don't have the outcome of that discussion with them, but I'm very happy working alongside them. DOC have also expressed eagerness to support that team as well. So, in good hands. Cron Street extension, so $1.2 million towards completing Cron Street ceiling. We're already working with the contractor in this space and finalising design scopes. That contract will be let very shortly. Old Christchurch Road steel extension. This is at $3.2 million. We are hopefully by the end of this week be final contract for tender, and we're looking to go to tender very, very shortly. Jackson Bay Wharf, the additional 500,000 that has gone on top of 500k that we've already received. Working on it alongside the Dow's Contracting. They've been very, very engaged and have already completed the assessment work, so we've got a very detailed report on the current condition of the wharf. It's fair to say that the $1 million will go a long way to rectifying the issues there, but there's a further conversation to have with council in terms of a total fix with not too much more money. We can get it another 30 years life on it. So the Dow's have done some good work and they actually good research on that. So we'll come back to council potentially as part of the LGP. The Hokitika swimming pool, as highlighted at the Capital Projects and Tenders Committee, we have a concept design basically discussed with key stakeholders. So stage one of that design has been approved by Capital Projects and Tenders Subcommittee. Stage two of that will come back as part of an LTP discussion for council to review. Getting that costed is underway for stage two. Foxwater treatment plant. So we have a final tender process now, and we should be going out for revised tenders with the original tender applicants from the last round. Arrow Hill Water Supply. Council has now awarded this contract through the Capital Projects and Tenders Committee and will get underway shortly. A big piece of work is underway with the Three Waters reform funding. So we have a task of completing the delivery plan by the 30th of September. We're hoping to finalise this work by tomorrow and get this through to DIA for their consideration. Really pleased with the work that our team has done on this. The focus has been on a number of fronts. One is around resilience. Two is around spreading the fund across the whole of Westland. And focusing on the front end piece of the Hokitika Wastewater Treatment Plant, scoping and design works. And I'd like to take the rest of the report as read, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Simon. There's a lot happening. Deputy Mayor Carruthers.
Just in terms of coping with the workload, Simon, projects and so on, from your point of view, from a managerial point of view, how's that being handled?
So, of course, we have appointed a project manager for 3 of our larger funding, for the Provincial Growth Fund funding. So Wayne Merriman has been appointed to support us on a number of fronts.
Is that a full-time role?
He's available for 3 days a week, I believe.
Yeah.
We've also just appointed someone to support us on the Three Waters project, so we're bundling that, so we have a project manager lined up. It's all included in the funding costs, and we're handling the rest internally.
So the costs for Wayne, are they coming out of the project?
Yes, correct.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So that's a net benefit to us.
Correct. Yeah. We couldn't do it with the resources we have in house.
Yeah.
And without compromising our business as usual.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Paul.
Thank you. Yeah, big report. 2 things. I have provided that letter support for the partners and for Fox, exploration of Fox. I hope it wasn't too late, it was a week overdue. A comment about the work down at the spit here, which is looking $1 million. It's looking really terrific. $1 million, of course, is what it cost. I just hope that, I mean, we all love that, it's a favourite area down there. I just hope I'm not tempting nature too much here. I'm reminded of what happened at Cobden, where the Grey District Council went great gusto and created a Freddie camping park right on the beach front and fortified with rock, and then they went and titivated with tar seal and curbing and channeling, and about 2 big seas later, it was a big pile of rubble.
So we have, as part of the work, improved the protection works as well, so we're raising another metre. We're very conscious of that as well, so the planting that goes there is all designed for that type of environment as well. It's not, we're not putting a lot of hard work up there. So I understand where your concerns are, but the way we've designed it is with that in mind as well. So
I always believe that it's best to design these things standing on the top of the beach in a howling northerly with a raging sea at your feet, rather than on a sunny day with a lovely sunset.
we did have a raging sea last week, if you recall, King Tide at the same time and managed it very well. So we have tested it already.
I'm not being pessimistic, it's just that history's not on our side with this. We just hope that it's this time.
It's there now, it's there.
Well, it's the Eiffel Tower, so.
Councillor Kennedy.
Yeah, just a couple of things here. So the old Christchurch Road extension, the contract has been prepared and put out to tender. But the Fox landfill, which in terms of the clean-up, Fox Guide's perfect. In terms of the removal and transporting of the waste, has that contract been put out to tender?
Past, no, it's still to work to be done. I'll pass over to Lily Sparks.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, through the chair. That work will go out to tender in about 3 weeks' time. Yeah, so we currently working through the consent process for the Fox landfill removal.
So it will go out to tender.
Yeah.
And the next question, obviously, following on from that, is the Cron Street extension.
Yeah.
It says works are set to begin as soon as funding's made available.
Yeah.
So has that contract been put out to tender, and how long was that tender period?
Cron Street is a direct appointment for the developer, which is GIP. The application was put in on behalf of the developer for that project. So GIP Construction is actually the contractor.
Right, so the contractor's getting the cash and will do his own tender process, or?
Now, the work is directly awarded to the developer, and the project is then vested in council, the roads.
Right, so once the developer's done it, then he'll...
Yeah, but GIP will be the contractor for that project, and that's how the application was presented to PGF.
Right, okay. No, that's fine. And the other thing is the Canary Cycle Trail, once again, along those lines, says the contractor's West Roads, but is that going to be tendered, those works?
That
or?
was tendered.
That was tendered. Righto.
This is going, that project's taken long.
Yeah, sorry, I just say you were planning stage whatever and nothing's happened, or?
This was potentially contracted prior to this training council, before I recall.
Yeah, right, okay. No, that's fine. Thank you.
Councillor Hart.
Thanks, Simon. A very comprehensive report. It's very detailed. I just have probably a question for Leslie around the audit. Is that going to be an issue around the start date plan, or have we rectified that situation?
Through your worship. So in discussion with audit a couple of weeks ago, they informed us that with COVID, it's actually made their workload a lot greater. So there was a chance that it would delay us, which it has done by a week for our audit. So I said, well, I don't care about that as long as you still finish on time by the statutory deadline of 31st of October. They weren't sure that that was going to happen, but I don't know if you realise that the actual official statutory deadline for councils for this year, because of COVID, is now the 31st of December. However, I have told them I still want it finished by the 31st of October. because we have got a finance team that need to actually carry on and do other things. And we need to get those done. We've got them penciled in, things that have been waiting to be done for over 6 months now. And that's going to put those things in jeopardy, which in turn will put our LTP in jeopardy as well. Yesterday we were informed by our CCOs that audit have delayed their audits as well, and they're not going to meet what would have been the statutory deadline, which of course means that we're not going to meet ours. I'm very disappointed. I've been told them I'm very disappointed in them. You would think really with all the unemployment that they could have resourced themselves properly, knowing that there was more work to do with COVID, but apparently not.
Okay. That's just, no.
And I do feel quite strongly about the fact that they're not meeting that deadline.
Yeah, I was worried about the
As
statutory
you
deadline.
can see.
Right, that was all.
I
Thank you.
suspect that this council won't be the other council in New Zealand.
No,
doing the same issue.
yeah.
I believe there is another West Coast council that's going to be delayed as well.
Councillor Neil.
No, yeah, good report. I've already answered all my questions, except that one. Thank you for that, Leslie.
Councillor Davison.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just on the Old Christchurch Road, the sealing, how much of the road is going to be sealed, and when do you think it would be likely to be finished?
Well, thank you, through the chair, I'll answer the question. The Old Christchurch Road project is 12.7 kilometres in total length, but that doesn't necessarily mean we'll get the full distance covered under the seal contract. So this is a design and construct contract, and it is up to the contractors to provide us the best financial outcome. So there's a fixed amount of money for that project, and we'll see how much we can do with that amount. The intent is to do as much as we can. Said 12.7 kilometres. So was there another question?
Yeah, and when would you like you to sort of complete?
Completion would be around August next year.
Thank you.
Councillor Cody.
Yeah, just a few things. First of all, and that's great news to hear down the Glacier guys that have been given that opportunity. I think anywhere we possibly can with all this funding coming into the coast that we can utilise that to give extra job opportunities to anyone and keep them employed in the meantime. Particularly down that way where I know that they're really, really struggling. So that's great to see the money's headed into that direction. Sorry, I've just got to go through all my little wee highlights. This is probably just throwing it probably a little bit out there, but the Hokitika swimming pool renovation. And I know, I don't know if this is a long-term part of the long-term plan discussion or not, but I did wonder, is the pool in the right location over there? We're doing all this money getting thrown into the pool, but is that where the pool needs to be?
I think that's a wider conversation that we have as part of the LTP workshop.
Yeah, okay.
Definitely, obviously we're doing some planning works now regarding the race course and some Castleware, so there has been some mooted points regarding where is the best place for the swimming pool. The fact that it's in town actually creates a very convenient aspect of the pool itself, but we are potentially only buying ourselves 10 to 15 years anyway with this refurbishment. We'll have to see what the council decides the future as part of the future planning processes.
I just think that, maybe it's okay, but when you say it, because it's in the central town area, the parking's terrible for it anyhow. And I just look at some of these other areas that we have around town. Most people travel to the pool in a vehicle anyhow, so I don't think it would matter what direction they drive. Okay, so that will be interesting to just see some more discussion come up on that. Now, really great and encouraging to see the Sunset Point now coming up and looking fabulous. However, I do have concerns around, now that we get all of this area looking beautiful and the toilets end up there, who's going to maintain it to keep it to that standard? And who's going to be, you know, looking after the toilets and to a high standard? You know, it's yet again around that whole
So it's obviously
maintenance.
council responsibility to maintain that, whether it's through a contract with another party or, which is likely to be, to make sure that they maintain it to the standard we expect.
And when we have standards of what we expect, are they reviewed so that we make sure that those standards are kept?
Well, they don't get reviewed daily. There is an audit process, but it's not a daily process. It's more likely a quarterly process.
Yeah, could we just tag that so that, you know, when they do maybe another audit on those maintenance programs with these areas, that we ensure that they are to set the satisfaction, because it's all very well to have these lovely spacious areas, but it's also, I think, vital for us in doing them to ensure they stay as best they can looking like that. Actually, you've answered my question with Audit New Zealand, and I did suspect that would have been around the COVID. And that's all. Thank you very much for your report.
Councillor Archer.
No further questions, Richard.
Simon, great report. And
I'd just like to take this opportunity to introduce Shelley Sullivan to the council. Shelley has joined us as the new People and Capability Manager in his first week on board. Welcome, Shelley. And you would have seen in the report a few other new staff members alongside.
So, just one question, if I could, about the digitisation of the council records. Which is quite a big thing, really, a moment in history. And so, are we taking advice from Archives New Zealand on what is to be archived and what's to be thrown out?
Through your worship, I'm leading that project with my IT team, and we are in constant touch with Archives New Zealand. We are following their retentions and disposals policy, so we know what we have to keep, what we want to keep, and what we can actually dispose of.
Okay. Through your worship, I recall years ago when Lands and Survey and Lands and Deeds packed up their tent and left town. And up until that stage, of course, all those records were accessible in town. Then they were sent to Archives New Zealand and they became inaccessible unless you travel to Christchurch or Wellington to see them. I'm note here that the records will be permanently archived and stored off-site. Does that mean Christchurch Archives New Zealand? Which makes them the same problem.
So before they actually go to Iron Mountain, so it's not Archives New Zealand, they're going to be kept in premises, which that's what they're set up for. They will be digitised, so there'll be digital copies accessible at any time. The idea is that we're going to be going through a website refresh, and there's going to be a link on there that you can actually access those items. But as far as Iron Mountain is concerned, we can recall anything back within 48 hours.
Okay, that all sounds great. Thank you.
Just through the chair. So I just, on the Sunset Point there, as you know, I live very close to Sunset Point and have quite a few people that have passed comment about how well it looks down there. They're just ecstatic how well it looks, and they've asked me to pass that on to council, who prepared, designed it and carried out the work. Fantastic job, and a great thing for the town and the community. Well done.
Just for your worship, there's a few aspects still to be completed there. The toilets aren't operational yet, so there's some plumbing and some lighting to go in, a drinking fountain, and also obviously getting light, electricity to the tambo to lighten that up.
The only eyesore there is the toilets. You drive in there, there's just, I know, but it's a bit
There's
of
some
a
planting.
it's a bit of a shame. You drive up that road, the access road, and there's a big square.
There's some planting still to go in.
Yeah, so I know that, and plus they're orange.
We got a point to 10.
Has Mitre 10 sponsored them?
Councillor Davis, your points, noted, and of course, it's not just council. The majority of the fill has been donated by local contractors. So
Yeah.
Yes,
Can I invite someone to move the recommendation that the quarterly report from the Chief Executive dated the 24th of September 2020 be received? Councillor Hartshorn, Councillor Cogan, those in favour, please. Thank you.
Sorry, could I just bring up something just quickly, and I'm not sure where it would have sat in amongst today, but just around as a council, because we've all been on board nearly 12 months, are we still, amongst this whole COVID thing, tagging for us to be doing a tour around all of this area and heading south with a lot of all these things that we're talking about?
We can revisit that. Yes, definitely. Under level 1, we can travel.
Yeah.
And get out and potentially do a road show. We'll look at how we can plan that.
Yeah, I just think it would be really useful because moving forward, some of this isn't visual.
Yes, that's a great idea.
Yeah,
Preferably in the
yeah.
wide season.
yeah. They're looking forward to get down to the Woodham Shield country.
Right, look, thank you, council. Let's move on to item 7 on the agenda, which is a graduated driver licensing program. Kieran, would you like to forward and
Sorry, David. I don't think they're registered down that side of the table.
welcome back?
Thank you, Your
I
Worship.
don't
Thank
think
you.
they're interest registered.
And I'd like
down
to
that side.
say thank you to all the esteemed councillors here today. Just what I'm going to do today is quickly brief and bring everybody up to date, and also a brief explanation of what we are actually doing here. But we have got, which you all hear from today, one of our individuals who have graduated in his journey, and also a mentor that's on our program. So for those of you that don't know about the program, so earlier this year we started across 6 districts. So of course Westland District being the pilot for people who have genuine barriers to getting their practical licence. So we're talking the restricted licence and the full licence. And what we work with on a professional level with our framework that has been going for 6 years with the Salvation Army is we actually train individuals who are our mentors to coach and take somebody out on a regular basis to bring them up to the skill level that they need to be not only a safer driver, but also somebody who's more aware on our roads, and also to pass the standards that we now have for the restricted and the full test. So a lot of the people that have been coming onto the program are coming from backgrounds that are dealing both with illegal driving, which is an endemic problem we have in New Zealand. So it's not just within the districts, this is something that's right across the country. Single mums who are struggling to be able to pay for the professional lessons that are required to meet that level to pass the test. Individuals who are leaving school that need to go into employment. We don't have public transport, obviously, out here to get them around. And so without a licence, there's a genuine barrier to get into employment. So these programs were introduced at the start of this year. And to do that, we started by actually bringing on board coordinators. So Westland District, we have the wonderful Glenys Byrne. And each of our coordinators, the first step of this is giving them a professional qualification. These are the high standards that we bring to this program. So all of them have gone through what's called an I endorsement. So that's your instructor qualification. So they all completed that at the start of the year. And then there's ongoing training that we do with them as well. So We were going to set to actually have a little bit of a graduation occur. However, we're right in the middle of the program at the moment for Westland District. And a lot of that has to do with obviously COVID. At certain levels, we can't operate our program. We're pleased to say that we're in full-fledged operating. So come November, we'll actually have a very large ceremony that we're going to be inviting you all to, see our graduates and also see the mentors. So before I'm going to ask if there's any questions around the program and the progress that's in Westland, what I would really like to do is for you to hear from somebody who's been on the journey and who's been part of the program and has passed. And he does have quite a story to tell. And I'd like him to share that with you now, and that is Tony Kehitanu. I can ask Tony to come up.
Welcome, Tony.
Hey everybody. Yeah, as I just said, my name is Tony Kehitanu, and I've not long just moved over to the coast. I'm one of the people that have sat on my learner's license for 17 roughly years. Just never thought, got a license, I thought, hey, that's going to do the job. I've heard heaps of fines, lost my license. And yeah, recently I've just thought I better start changing my ways and step up to the next level of my restricted, which is legally be able to drive now. So I've been doing some driving school with Glen's, and I find it very professional. And as I've driven for 17 years on my learners, so I was a confident driver, but she ironed out some of the creases and I'd say some of the bad habits that everyone probably gets into, and brought me up to the standard of all the new kind of laws and regulations that are out there these days. And she really needs some more mentors. So if there was anyone that knows anyone that would like to be a mentor, that would be really awesome. And I strongly recommend it, and it's good that it's here on the coast. And for people like me, kind of just restarting off, the funding's not there to pay for the professional driving lessons. So it's exactly the same thing, and it's well recommended. They supply the car, and I don't have a car at the time, so even to go for my restricted license, they do all that, everything's taken care of. So it's really good. And it's really good to stay here on coast.
Well, Tony, it's good to have you home. Just hang on, councillors, anyone with a question?
So Tony, just so you've got your restricted now, will you continue this program until you've got your full licence? Is that
coming closer to the time, I'll go for some more refreshing lessons. And get my full licence, definitely.
cool? And it will be through this driver training? No,
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, and then getting my restrictions lead me to a job within the next 4 days, which is leads to full-time work straight away. So,
Perfect.
Judy, you have a question?
Not a question, just a congratulations, Tony. That's bloody awesome, what you've gone and done. Bringing through a younger generation of children myself, you are just one of a lot of people that I know out there that either don't have their learners or have been sitting on their learners forever. And the other big issue to do with that is, you are right, around that a lot of them can't afford to get, the instructor driver training. They just can't afford to get that done. And they also don't have anyone, because often, parents, for whatever reason, don't have the time or the patience to do it. So I'm really encouraged to see people like you getting in there and using this as an opportunity, because a driver's licence, just as you will see, just provides so much more job opportunity and independence. Get out there and tell everybody.
Well done, Tony. I really appreciate you coming along. It's great to hear part of your journey.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Tony. And a lot of coaches coming here today as well for you to speak to you. This is the confidence that we watch on the program. So, I want to also thank Tony for spending the time and having the courage to speak in front of you. That's stepping out of his comfort zone big time, by the way. So the uniqueness about this particular program, it is free. which, you know, it sounds like it could be too good to be true. There aren't officials, that's what people look for. So as it's new and it's being piloted, it's making those people that are sitting at home, like the Tonys that go, I know I can't pass, but I know I can't afford. And you talked about mums and dads. How many mums and dads, how many of you in this room, if I said, I'm going to go and put you through the test, feel confident that you can pass? So, you know, so these are the barriers, mental barriers that people have, and they're rightly so, because most of them wouldn't. So the other thing that's unique about the program, because if you have a lot of instructor, there's a lot of cost involved in that. And so our mentors are the key to the success. But it was interesting because yesterday I was in Blackpool, so we got the program in Greymouth as well, and I asked the mentor there, you know, what would you say if you just gave me one line? And she said, my driving has improved so much. You know, we get slack when we get old, she said to me. So that's been an extra benefit to the program. But instead of me telling you that, I would like to ask to come up. We actually brought in, which isn't on your agenda, and I know not it's there today, but if you don't mind, we can ask Sue Hustwick to come up, who is a mentor, volunteering her time to take people out to practice drives.
Thanks, Sue. You're far too young to be a mentor.
Well, having said that, you know, 50 years is quite a long time ago to have set my own licence, and I can tell you it's a lot more difficult these days. And as people have said, it's made me a much better driver. One of the things that Glenys first showed me to tell the young people is to go for the gap. You know, go for the gap when you're turning a corner. I said, what gap? You know, the gap between the white lines. What line? What white lines? I haven't noticed. And so this actually takes me back to watching these young people when they come out driving. They have been driving, so they've been on their learner's licence for a long time, and they're driving on their own, which is illegal. But also, like every single one of us, sometimes bad habits creep in, and they'll be the type of things that will cause them to fail the test. So I've found it particularly rewarding. I don't think all the young people are terribly nervous, of course, but I just say, just pretend I'm Nana sitting here, just watching you. And so what we do is we drive around town, taking in all of as many giveaway signs, stop signs, railway lines, roundabouts, and just repetitive practicing over and over again. So things that are going to make them safe drivers in the future are embedded into their psyche, and of course are necessary for them to pass the test. So it's not a big deal. It doesn't take a lot of time. It's very rewarding. It's not at all stressful. The children, the young people that we've been dealing with are very conscientious. They're determined to get their licence so they can take their next step, as Jenny said, to get into employment and just to get around the place. So it's great to see them starting off nervous and very quiet, and their confidence grows with every lesson. So I'm very happy to be part of the program and do my best to see if we can encourage other mentors to do the same.
On your side.
Look, I just wanted to say it's great what you do, because when some of us here learn to drive, it costs nothing. You know, just went out and you've done it, parents done it for you. And Tony, you've made a big step in life there, and proud of you for it, but even the way you stood up and spoke, it was really good.
Thank you. So really, one of the things that we are actively doing as we work throughout the different districts, and obviously we're also based in Christchurch, so we're looking after the South Island. We work on part of the National Drive Change body who's working with government, because it is a broken system and it's not a fair system. And so we all need to be actively helping people to make it an even playing field. So as we pilot this in Western District, the more support that we can get about creating a fair system and making people safer and better drivers on our road and involving the community in doing that, not just leaving it up necessary to mum and dad, because mum and dad now both are holding jobs down. You know, life is different to what it was decades ago. It is about being a community to have something that, if you think about a qualification in your life, the one that everyone needs is a driver's license. You know, there's not many things that go right across the board like that, and so we need to work together to help. So I'm really pleased that the progress that Glenys has made for the Westland District. It is our first program. We should be up to number 2, COVID, good old COVID, but we're well on our way supporting the district. So, is there any questions for any of you?
Through Worship, we met with the Ministry of Social Development group a couple of weeks ago. One of the issues is the delays in actually getting restricted licence, people off restricted onto full licence because of the long delays in getting assessments completed. There's almost a 3-month backlog of assessments. Do you come across that in any of your work here?
Yeah, so actually on the drive change, we had a formal letter and we've got a formal meeting next week again with NZTA that involves VTNZ, of course, who hold that. So, you know, there's a lot of work trying to be done and there is a backlog. So up until, while we're at level 2, tests were booked out until the end of November here. That's the wait period. However, now we've come to level 1 that has opened up. So what we actively do is we go online to help our drivers on our program, and when cancellations come up, we're the first to snaffle those ones. So we're working with the problem, but trying to find a solution within it from a ground level. But at the same time, we're trying to work with government and agencies such as NZTA to work with VTNZ who hold the contract to provide that testing, to change it. They're talking about that it's because of COVID, but 1 year ago, as we said to them, it was exactly the same.
That's right.
So you can't use COVID as your excuse. So that's something that the Drive Change Network body is putting their fist down. We've just done a formal letter and we've got a formal meeting next week. So I'm happy to keep you updated on it because it's a problem.
The other challenge for Westland is the distance people have to travel to get assessed. I heard a story about someone from Haas having to travel 4 times, failing 4 times. So it is quite an issue in terms of spreading that testing out as well.
You have, and then on top of that, the cost. That person sitting the test 4 times, there's a cost.
And time out of employment.
Employment, and somebody having to bring them up, because if they're meant to be coming up with somebody, the system is quite broken, to be honest, and that's why there's this committee or this driving body that is trying to work with government to say it's just totally unfeasible. So even if you had all the right support, that you were successful in every test passing first time, we're still talking $400 to get through just paying for the test. That's not including professional instruction, driver education. That's a huge cost for an individual now. So no, it's not, but we're well aware, yeah.
I just, I would question, how many people are currently going through the program or have completed?
So we work with one car in Hokitika at the moment for Westland District. So we've got one car that goes out twice a week per person. So each cohort can take up to 20 people. So we've had actually 8 sit and pass their test for restricted licence, and we've had 1 individual on the fast track floor, which is the full licence at this stage. The plan for it is scratching the surface. I'm not going to for the problem that's here, but in a year, provided that we don't go up and down between levels, we stop at level 3. We're looking at 68 passes for this district per year in the restricted licence and 25 for the full licence. And the only restriction that we have, to be really honest, is not the framework of the program. It is actually, if we get more mentors, we can put more drivers on. So the more we have in volunteer mentors, the more people we can look after. And we can keep adding cars, like we have in other areas. So in Christchurch, we started with 1 car, we now have 4 cars. So we can put 50 people on one program at one time to get them through in the 3-month period that we work with them. So there are restrictions unless we have the number of mentors.
And no, that's really good. And just a suggestion in terms of clearing the backlog, perhaps it would be a good idea to work with independent testing officers or whatever to clear that backlog, the likes of Shelley and Greymouth and.
That's held with VTNZ. So that backlog that Simon was referring to is actually the backlog with VTNZ. So that's a contract that is held with NZTA. So nobody else is permitted to do the testing.
For class one.
For any of those licenses. So for up to class one, so we deal with up to class one. So you have to be a TO, you have to be a testing officer, and they're all employed by VTNZ.
Right.
Who hold the contract with government. So there's nowhere else we can go. Anywhere in the whole country. That's it.
It's a bit odd, doesn't it?
There were people, I can tell you, that I know of young people that have been coming over here to get sit their restricteds. One, because there was less traffic, and two, because they could get in quicker over here than they could over in Canterbury.
They do have they have a problem, you know, and without going into too much, because I don't want to take up too much time. It's the conditions of the work, the testing officer, and how long it takes to train them. That's their problem. So they're trying to recruit to change the problem but they've got barriers there.
Yeah, I mean, it seems ridiculous that let's say Shelley and Greymouth, she can give someone a licence to drive a truck and trailer essentially, but she can't give someone a licence to drive a passenger car.
That's right. And it's the same, yeah. So class 2R is a completely different system.
Yeah.
And actually, it's interesting you brought that up because that's actually sitting with the driver change. It's like the learner licence is a backlog as well, just to give you learners. Yeah. That's a computer test. That's ridiculous. They could be totally mobile and be placed in schools and it could be regulated completely different. So this is exactly what we're bringing up with the government.
Yeah, cool.
And we're saying we need to make changes and make it more accessible to people. Yeah.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Look, thank you so much for coming along and Tony, Glenys, Sue, awesome to see you. You're making a difference. Keep up the good work.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Councillors, could someone like to move that the presentation from Karen Tessering, Program Manager for the Graduated Driver Licensing Program, be received? Councillor Kim, do I have a second to Councillor Hart? Thank you. All those in favour?
Aye.
It's hard to imagine that a computer test.
No, that is all it is.
It's just hard to imagine.
Yeah.
The next presentation is the Battle for the Birds, and we're lucky enough to have Tom and welcome Tom.
Yes, that's the name.
Thanks everybody for the opportunity to come along this afternoon. Mark Davies sends his apologies. He always likes to come and make this presentation himself actually, because he's quite passionate about it. TPN and Amani, Battle for our Birds program. So it's a PowerPoint presentation, but I won't stick to the notes too much. I know we're a little bit behind time for your meeting already, so I'll carry on through it. So you may have heard of Battle for Our Birds in the past, but TPN and Amani is basically means caring for our birds, and we've rebranded in the last year or so to TPN and Amani, with the tagline below it being our previous name, which was Battle for Our Birds. And it's all about the predator control that we do around the country. Yeah, so it's about our landscape. Sorry, I meant to introduce Nick Constant. I'll do that. Nick's our operations manager and HTV. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so it's all about our landscape scale predator control on the West Coast. We've got a lot of operations that we do up and down the West Coast, from Katarangi right down to Big Bay, and we work closely with a number of partners on the predator control program as well. It's really all about looking after the birds, and we know that if we look after the birds and sustain good healthy bird populations. The forest will basically look after itself. Birds got to spread the seeds, and also we're doing predator control. We're controlling browsing alongside possums. So that helps protect the forest. Why are we doing it? We're concerned obviously about the iconic bird species like kiwi, whio, moa, kea and kaka. But we're also concerned about the more common songbirds that we still see a lot, but we need to remember that Europeans have only been here for less than 200 years, and the pests that we brought have only really had an impact on the common species for a fairly short time frame. So species like tui and bellbird, fantail, and robin and tomtit, even though we might still see them a reasonable amount, they're not as common as they should be. So there's a long-term goal, and I'm sure you've all heard of the Predator-Free 2050 strategy. So that is looking to eradicate possums, rats and stoats from New Zealand by 2050. It's a very aspirational goal, and we don't know if we'll get there yet, but we think it's a good goal to have. There's a lot of science going on in that space to work out how we can reach the Predator-Free 2050 goal, and yeah, a lot of work going on with our partners and in the science space. There's also a lot of work going on the West Coast generally. So there's a project just being fairly recently been announced up at Te Kinga, and that's all based around that Predator-Free 2050 work. Doing nothing just isn't an option. So people ask, why do we think we need to do this stuff? The predators are killing our native wildlife at an incredible rate, and basically, if we don't do predator control, we're going to see more species go to, if not national extinction, certainly local extinction. So we're going to be losing some of our iconic native birds from valleys and from places on the West Coast, and we don't want that to happen. West Coast sites for 2021. So we've, it's probably difficult for you to read the names on that map, but from the north, we've got the Aorere block, which is partially in northwest Nelson, and that has just been treated in the last couple of months. We've got the Heaphy lowland, which has been deferred until early next year. Then coming down, we've got, you can see the grey block, that's actually an osprey operation, or shared osprey and dog operation. That's the Mokanui and New Creek. So osprey, we work very closely with osprey because they've obviously got the XEB-free program. And where we can collaborate on operations, we do that if we can with osprey. So that's one of the collaborations we've got this year. Then below that, you can see the New Creek label. That is a large block up behind Denniston, and that's another collaboration with osprey, but it's been the program's been run by DOC, so just a bit of funding from osprey to contribute to that one. Here we come down to Punakaiki. That operation is planned to happen in the next couple of months, and it's about protecting kiwi and paparoas. If we don't get that one done in the next couple of months, we'll go beyond the period where kiwi will be nesting, so we'll actually postpone it until the same time next year. So we're hopeful that the West Coast weather plays ball and we can get that one done in the next couple of months. Roaring Meg, again, just below that, that's in the Grey Valley up near the Pike River mine. We have just treated that one 2 weeks ago. Then coming through the south, we've got Okarito, which is planned for July next year, 2021. Inland, we've got the Whareroa block, and that one is on hold. I'm not sure if we've treated that one or not, partly depending on the work that's up to in the valley, as it's a collaboration with them. Coming down again, we've got the Copeland, which is due to be treated next winter. And then the two purple blocks you can see down the bottom there, Ask Kiwi and Landsborough, are both ground control operations that we do handle. You can see on that map the collaborations that we have with other parties and the other control that party sites and Austria are doing. So there's actually quite a large area of the West Coast that does get treated for predators and possums on a regular basis. But you can see there's quite a few gaps. Probably about half of this space that doesn't get any treatment at all. We've got some really good success stories. So sites like the Landsborough Valley, we started monitoring mohua down there about 22 years ago now. And the bird counts at the time suggested something like 14 mohua in the valley. And mohua are a really precious bird. They're quite uncommon, very localised population of them nationally now. You don't see them anywhere around here, but there was this remnant population in the Landsborough Valley. We've done predator control in the Landsborough Valley since then for the last 21 years, and obviously we keep doing the monitoring of mohua, and those numbers have gone from about 14 birds to about well over 400. So we estimate 444 birds. So it's a really good increase. And yeah, good success story. Blue duck are another species, Orphea, that benefit from predator control operations. On the west coast, there's sites like the Copeland, Styx Valley, just out the back here, the Arahuda, Kawaka, and this example is from Tongariro Forest up north, but field pairs at that site went from 30 pairs up to over 100 pairs with predator control. So we know we can really turn things around with effective predator control. Kaka are another species that benefit. The graph there shows the breeding success. The red bar is a treatment area after a predator control aerial P80 operation. The tiny little 1.75 bar on the right, that's in a non-treatment area. So nesting success with Kaka is hugely improved with good predator control. Yeah, so we expect that with reduced mustelid and rodent numbers, the native species are going to thrive. We've really refined the technology around our predator control over the last 50 odd years, really. Back in 1970, you can see the green bar there. That's kilograms per hectare of 1080 that was used. So up to 30 kilograms of 1080 was used back in the 1970s, which was a hang of a lot. And since then, we've refined the methods, we've refined the way that the bait's put on the ground. And back then it was often carrot bait, now it's generally zero bait. So we use much less, down to 1 to 2 kilograms per hectare. We do a lot of monitoring, as I mentioned. We do the monitoring of things like the mohua in the Landsborough Valley, but we're also monitoring kiwi all the time on the sites that we treat, and doing general forest bird counts as well. So we know that birds are really benefiting from what we're doing. In terms of results, that graph shows, the blue bars show prior to application of 1080 at each site. So each blue and red pair of bars there is one site. The red bar shows after the application of 1080, so you can see that the before and after is really quite dramatic in terms of the reduction in rat populations. And we get a corresponding decline in mustelid or stoat numbers after 1080 as well, because the stoats don't actually eat the bait because it's zero bait, and predators. But they do eat rat carcasses, so they get a secondary poison for the rat carcass. Obviously, some people have quite significant concerns about our predator control program, and specifically about the use of 1080. And those concerns can be based around things like the environment effects, the effects on their ability to hunt animals, animal rights. So, people think the best are here too, animal welfare, that people maintain that it's a cruel way for an animal to die, and the bykill issue, obviously. And the bykill one is one, particularly with Kia, that we're concerned about, and doing a lot of research and work on how we can resolve the problems that we have with Kia being such an inquisitive bird and still interacting with bait and taking it, and unfortunately some are lost. Yeah, so social media has changed the ball game in terms of people's sort of activity around 1080 protesting. Really, we seldom get people come out to operations now. Most of the noise that we see is on Facebook. I'll talk a little bit about the partnership we have with ZIP, Zero Invasive Predators. So ZIP are an independent organisation funded partly by DOC and partly by the Next Foundation. They're primarily set up as a research organisation, and you'll know that they've been doing a lot of work in the Whareroa Valley over the last few years. So their goal is to trial a method where we basically do predator control once, very effectively. So we get predators in an area to basically zero, and then they set up a bunch of detection tools. So that's using cameras and lured cameras, so that animals come in and feed on the lure, the camera will detect that they're there. And when we detect a pest, we can go and detect those pests, kill those pests at an individual level, and basically keep each block at zero density of pests. So we'll get reinvasion, but we can detect it when we do, and keep the pests out. And long term, the hope is that if we can get that technology to work appropriately, that we won't have to go back and do regular aerial Canadian operations like we do now. It'll be one off, and then with the technology, we'll just keep the pests out of it. So it's quite an exciting time in the pest control space. Yeah, so that slide basically explains the goal of it's going from repeated large-scale operations every 3 to 5 years to having one large-scale operation, really intensive, remove everything and keep those pests out. That's the site in the Perth Valley that's it worked on last year. 12,000 hectares in total, so a fairly large site. They are confident that they've removed all the possums from that site, and they think they've got about 50 rats in there, which they're picking up on cameras and poisoning, just using poisoning and trapping, using hand-made baits, and they think there's maybe half a dozen stoats in there which they're picking up on their detection cameras as well, and managing to poison those on the way as they detect them too. So ZIP have been instrumental in the work on Kia, and trying to prevent Kia from taking 1080 bait. And some of the research that they did last year used tar carcasses, which they put up high in the alpine zone to draw the Kia in to feed, and then they presented the Kia with cereal bait, which was non-toxic, but it looked exactly like the toxic bait and it had a repellent in it. So basically the Kia would the bait feed on a bit of it, feel sick, learned that it wasn't a great thing to make it to a group. And they had very good success through their operation with that. They lost only one tab here out of about 35, 40 birds, I think they had tagged in there. And because there's no predators at that site now, the remaining care in that block are free to breed and nest successfully. So it's a really good outcome. And Kia, we know that Kia do, despite losing future operations on occasion, we know that overall they benefit from the use of 1080 because the predators are gone and they can fletch the young. So this is getting close to the end of the talk, but a lot of people ask, why don't we do more ground control? Why was there a 1080? And there's several reasons for that really, but one of them comes down to cost. So at the top here you can see the cost of aerial 1080 is around $33 per hectare. Cost for ground control to be as effective as aerial 1080 is up to $1,000 per hectare. So it's a huge cost difference. We can treat a hang of a larger area by using aerial 1080. And the other thing is that it's effective on rats, stoats, and possums, so it's a triple whammy really on the pests. If we were to do trapping methods, you've got to have different trapping set up for possums and stoats. Same trapping set up for stoats and rats, but you've got to have at least 2 different trapping methods. And just having the staff capability and the personnel that can get around the bush and do ground control over the scale landscapes that we're talking about is another factor. It's really hard to get people to do that kind of, they have the skills to do that kind of work. And safety is another factor as well. The next slide, we're going to talk about the Pinataki site. So just as an example, there's 70,000 hectares that we treat with aerial 1080. If we would try and do that with ground control for stoats, that slide shows the trap network. So you need a trap every 10 hectares for stoats. And if you were to try and treat rats as well, you need a trap every 1 hectare, so you need 10 times that many traps. So it's a hang of a network of not only traps, but you've got to have access to those traps, so you need a traffic network, and it really just becomes impractical at that scale to do the part control. Yeah, but something like 200 days to check that series of traps, and yeah, and safety in country like that Kaparara stuff. Putting people into that country is pretty rugged and slippery and limestone holes, and it's not a good place to be.
Tom,
Anyway, time for questions.
Tom, thank you for that. As you know, this council has historically aggressively supported the program in Perth and supports predator-free 2050. And as far as I'm aware, will continue to do so. Councillors, questions? Who would like to start? Deputy Mayor Carruthers would like to.
No questions, pretty clear. I'm amazed it's only $33 a hectare for the helicopter-based operation. It seems remarkably good value.
It is, it's remarkably good value. Yeah, and when you do comparison to ground control, there isn't a comparison.
So that includes the helicopter cost and everything?
Yep, that's the bait cost, the helicopter cost, the planning cost, consents, that's everything. Yep.
Wow. That seems amazing. Cool.
It's economies of scale too, right? Because cities, a lot of our blocks are like that, depending on about 70,000 hectares. So it's still a hang of a lot of money we're spending. By 70,000 by 33.
But you couldn't do that area by land-based means.
Exactly.
It's not feasible.
You couldn't practically do it. You could possibly do the margins, but yeah, without the aerial methods, we wouldn't be effective. Managing predators in that area.
Yeah. Paul.
Thank you, Bishop. So our runanga has a long-standing policy of not supporting 1080, and that stands. That's not because we like predators. Quite the opposite. We are very supportive of anything that will get rid of the pests, as long as it's not wholesale aerial 1080. I'm not going to preach about it, but this whole thing, of course, is wrapped up in euphemisms, which is the key to selling it to the public, I might add. However, this council in Mayor Pugh's time did have a policy, which I understand still stands on the books, of not having any aerial 1080 from ridgeline to ridgeline around water supplies. I'd just like to know whether or not that policy does still stand. I've never seen it as being rescinded.
I understand you still okay.
Right. Yeah, okay. So that's, the other thing is that we have been involved with ZIP and watching from the sidelines of ZIP and their eradication program down in the Perth Valley, which is about to be broadened quite a lot in that area. And there's some really innovative things that ZIP are doing, which we're very supportive of. What we don't support, of course, is the aerial 1080. The major concern, of course, with 1080 is that it's always said that it's the only way to get into inaccessible areas, and that of course is true. But it's when it's used in accessible areas that becomes the issue. And that's one issue that we have right now with ZIP, which is proposing to drop 1080 in South Okaretu Forest, which is quite level contour, quite an easy country comparatively, and we don't accept that there's any need for aerial 1080 to be doused in there, or treated as the euphemism is. So if 1080 was restricted truly to the inaccessible areas, it would be a different matter. I'm sure it would cause a rethink of our renaming policy, but the fact is that it's not, and hence the policy stands.
Councillor Kennedy.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Just a couple of questions. So how many tonne for the 2021 program are you expected to aerial drop?
I don't have that.
No, that's all right.
In my head. We don't usually measure it by how many tonne we're putting on, we measure it by how many hectares we're treating. So this last year we did on the West Coast, we did around 300,000 hectares. Treated around 300,000 hectares.
Yeah.
What proportion of the ground area of Western is that community?
Oh gosh.
I'll have to go to.
I'm not sure. It's only about I think it's 800,000. No, what's the dog area?
I think.
You mean the Sturgeon land?
Sturgeon land. You'll know that.
So 1.2.
I don't know the figure off the top of my head.
Significant.
I think 300,000 is only.
Drop. And you talk about science, and working out how it's going to be done. I admit every time I hear the Predator Free 2050, I giggle. Yeah.
And it is an aspirational goal.
Is there any research or anything being done in terms of using breeding up, and people may laugh, but it's a thing, breeding up genetically superior animals, which then are released into the environment? I know it's a big thing, that only throw male semen to effectively breed out all predators. because I mean, they do it in Florida, they release, 750 million mosquitoes into the environment to breed out the ones that carry dengue fever. Is there any, is DOC involved in any of that kind of carry on?
Yeah, DOC's not involved in any of that research, but there is, I do know there's research going on at Landcare and other scientific institutes looking into that kind of thing.
Cool.
But bit of a long way away from having any solutions.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. And the final thing is there's this large conversation, huge conversation going on about water quality in New Zealand and who's responsible for what. Now, how does this fit into what you're doing in the future of the 1080 program in the area where you're putting in poison, rotting carcasses into waterways? How do you see that, and will this conversation affect what you do in the future?
Potentially it will, yeah, that's a good question. 1080, the bait itself, decomposes, breaks down really quickly and the toxin dissipates into natural compounds, so it's very rare to be detected in spring. The carcass thing is, the main reason carcasses are an issue is because you do an operation in one area, and if the carcass ends up in the river, it ends up down the river and outside your operation area, potentially on the beach, something, and then someone's dog eats the carcass, that sort of thing. So those are the main issues that we have when carcasses being shipped down by rivers. But I don't think it's a water quality issue, to be honest.
Yeah. That's fine.
Councillor Hart.
Hi, thanks, Tom. That's a good report.
It's not thanks for the opportunity to come along, and we appreciate it. And I know Mark's keen for us to come and give you an update, sort of on a roughly annual basis.
Francois.
Yeah, so our reading supports the use of 1080, but we don't like it. However, we can't not do anything, as was in the slide. So until there's an alternative product, then we really don't have a choice. So we're fully on board with the operation and supporting it. And the figures that you're showing around numbers increasing and rats and stoats decreasing over a period of time, it's good. So I'm just saying, good stuff. Crack on with it.
Thanks, Francois.
Councillor Neil.
I was wondering also about the reading the sterility into the animals, because there certainly has been talk about it. That does go more. We used to live in Okarito and always found that when 1080 was being dropped, all the operators were very good at leaving our whole valley clear, and that didn't have any at all. We never had an issue. So sometimes that might be an issue, but we found them really good. And the other question I had was about cats. Do you have, what are the cat numbers on the coast?
The cat numbers are generally fairly localised to areas around settlements. There's some areas like Lewis Pass that have high numbers of cats, because most people at least in the long highway out there in the past, and they do bear in their tribe. We don't have any specific cat control program on the coast at the moment, but we have in the past, where there's been a localised issue with cats, we have done some cat control, and it's usually just really localised cat traffic, like for instance around the Haas Plains, around the old dump sites at the Haas Plains, Haas Beach, places like that, where people would release cats and they've started to spread out the forest from the site. Try to get on top of those cats.
Councillor Davidson.
Tom, I know you guys are really really good about protecting the environment. You're very passionate about that. My question is just on the overall progress of the of your Battle of the Birds. how excited are you in terms of that?
Pretty excited. It's really, it's doing, I think it's doing really well, yeah. Obviously, we still have our issues, we still have the care issue that we need to resolve. And there's still some community concern around the use of 1080. But overall, I think the technology has got so much better. Our operators are really professional, our contractors that we bring in to do the work. And we're getting good results from it, as shown on the talk. So, yeah, really excited about how it's going.
Thanks, Tom.
Councillor Cove.
Thanks for your presentation, Tom. It was really interesting. It was actually very scary too, though, when you mentioned 300,000 hectares treated last year, and then I did the sums on $33 a hectare and then $1,000 a hectare. Actually, both figures are quite scary, really, because even at $33, you know, still 9,900,000 a year, which is, well.
Yeah, that's a big program.
Absolutely. Personally, I do not like 1080. And that's simply because, I'm a big animal advocate, and my concerns are more around, you know, if the 1080 was to then get into, you know, like particularly with dogs and cats and that sort of thing, you know, that's a big concern for me. And like you said, it can be something as simple as a carcass coming down a river and then, so that's my worry. But I understand why it is that it is used in the areas it's used. It's just that if there was a preference, I hope there'll be a day that will come where something else can be as effective to do the job that you guys are achieving. That's not having the effects those outlying effects that 1080 can actually do. Which
thoroughly appreciate that. We fully understand that's around 1080, and 1080 is a really good tool for us, but it's not perfect.
No.
But no tool is perfect.
No.
So far, you know, even the trapping and the other options, you know, they all have their issue. And 1080 is one of the best tools we've got in the box at the moment. So yeah, but I totally agree. I hope something else comes along that we can use.
Councillor Archer.
Yeah, just for your worship. Thanks, Tom, that's good. Just wondering, I heard that maybe the zipper was coming down around the glacier regions, Vauxhall Franz, all that. Is there any thought of those towns which are tourism reliant of doing a sort of extensive trapping program around the towns, no 1080, but just extensive trapping so that the tourists in one day the overseas will return and they can hear more extensive versions within the local walks and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, well, there's more and more of that happening. And I think part of what's a bit proposing, and it is still just a proposal, in plans and everything, but part of what they're doing is we'll be working with the community to get more local trips happening.
Would Doc do something like that through the Jobs for Nature? Or?
Yeah, there's Wayne Costello certainly working on. He's working with the community as we speak. We'll probably know all about that and deal with that on that.
Other than the way Wayne's going, and that's the only that I'm aware of for now. So about 100 jobs going with tourism operators that goes through.
Yeah, the Jobs for Nature is a really good opportunity to increase that capacity to do those type of projects.
Yeah, especially in those areas where high visitor is like in the valleys, in the basic valleys.
Jane, did you want?
Yeah, well, there's already communities doing it just off their own bat. And I think I've seen has done in the past, lost doing it. Months past, there's quite a few doing it. So it's great to see that people are getting out, looking out their own little backyards.
That's a really good point. There's a really growing area that this community is becoming passionate about getting out there and doing traffic and so.
There's individuals as well, aren't there, that buy, do they buy the traps through DOC?
They often, there's an annual pool of funding through DOC, the community fund, where people or groups can apply for projects like the community traffic, or wind control, or whatever that things.
I agree, that's very good.
Yeah.
And maybe, sorry if I can just link that to what Paul said earlier, I believe part of the Jobs for Nature, they're clearing the existing tracks in the South Okarito forest currently, so perhaps maybe that could.
Tom, thank you very much for the presentation. There are, of course, in the community, there are diverse views. And your presentation, clean, crisp, enjoyed it. And,
thank you, George.
Well done. Yeah, thanks to Paul for taking the time to come in. It really is appreciated. Love to see more of it.
Yeah, we want to do more of it. We try and get around all councils on the West Coast and other interest groups and parties and give a presentation similar to this one. We'd like to stay connected with the community with what we're doing and share the reasons why. So,
Give our regards to Mark. You can work out that he's not irreplaceable.
He was delivering some training today, so good to be here. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Councillors, can I invite somebody to resolve the presentation from Tom Balcony, Regional Lead, and Nicole Kuzman, yes, Operations Manager for the Department of Conservation, be received. Councillor Cogan, Councillor Neal, those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Move on to the next item on the agenda. And we're at the Chief Executive's Review Committee Terms of Reference. It's on pages 35 to 39 of your report. And it's being presented by the Chief Executive. By myself, is it?
Myself, Chris.
Is it?
Can't do it for myself.
Can't do it for yourself, yeah.
That's awesome. In that case, we'll take the paper as read.
Can we not get a bit more detail on it, Your Worship?
Stop it. Councillors, are there any questions? I mean, the purpose of the report is to ensure that the terms of reference for the committee are updated from the previous executive committee. Councillor. Questions?
So does it get updated every 5 years?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all.
And it can be, look, the reality is if councillors ever feel strongly about it, you can update it by putting a notice of motion in and bringing it to council. But it's administrative in nature and the same as we've adopted the reports for each of the other committees.
And so this was, because you've had the committee, there's been no changes from the previous?
No changes from the previous executive committee terms of reference. They're now being updated. So I'd like to move that they, what have we got here? That council adopts the terms of reference for the Chief Executive's Review Committee. Councillor Neal, thank you. Do I have a second? Councillor Hart, those in favour? Thank you. On the next one's an important one. It's council becoming a guaranteeing local authority of the New Zealand Local Government Funding Agency Limited. It's set out on pages 40 to 62 agenda, and Leslie Crichton, Group Manager of Corporate Services, will present the paper.
Thank you, Worship. Good afternoon. As you're aware, we joined the Local Government Funding Agency in 2018 as a borrower-only council. This has entitled us to better pricing for our debt, better interest rates. To be able to borrow over 20 million with the Local Government Funding Agency, we need to become a guaranteeing council. As you've been made aware previously, there is a small, what we have to announce is a small risk council, as in if council does actually default on the debt with the local government funding agency, we will need to pay a proportion of that debt to the local government funding agency. No council has ever defaulted, and it is backed by the central government. Any payment that we would have to make is pro rata based on our rating information in the district, so it's a very, very small risk to council. To be able to continue borrowing over 20 million at better rates, we do need to become a guaranteeing council. So this report is to actually resolve on quite a few elements in the resolution as dictated by the local government funding agency to become that guaranteeing council.
Thanks, Leslie. Councillors, will take the papers as read, and I would also hope that you've studied the resolution, as I don't really want to read it out. I'll open it for discussion. Councillor Hartshorn. Councillor Cogan.
No, well, I mean, we talked about this initially anyhow, and yeah, I fully support. I think this will be a really beneficial for our council to be.
Councillor Davidson.
No questions. Thank you.
No, fully support.
Francois.
No, nothing from me, thank you.
Councillor Hart.
No, nothing from me. Obviously, we've talked about it before and been through it all.
Councillor Kennedy.
No, obviously, yeah, same as Councillor Hart. Just in terms of the small risk, I forget, what would our share be if it went to custard? It would be 500, would it, or no?
Yeah, it depends how much that actual default is.
Yeah.
But it's prorated through all the councils that are part of the local government funding agency. We're talking the big councils as well, like Auckland. And it's based on prorated for our rating.
Yeah.
Ratepayers, so 6,600.
Oh, yeah. Very minimal.
Small amount.
No, perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
No concerns at all.
And Deputy Mayor Brothers.
As I was aware, I can tell you that we're frequently instructed to advise people who are asked to sign guarantees, and the advice universally is don't sign. Guarantees are only the bad news in the sense that obviously there's a liability attached to signing a guarantee, which you alluded to. But it does seem here that the risk is a theoretical one.
Yeah.
And it's never likely to be realised. But in any event, because of our borrowing is likely to go over 20 million, we don't have much choice anymore to do. So it does seem to be a sensible thing to do anyway. The risks seem to be minimal, and therefore it makes sense.
Well, councillors, I'd invite someone to move the resolution, which is listed in the papers, from 1.4 through to 1.48. Councillor Hart moved. Councillor Neil second. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Thank you very much. Well done, Leslie. It's been a long journey.
Yeah, I'll say.
Not due for another something to
Before
sign.
you leave the stand, the next item on the agenda is the Reserves Contribution Fund, and it's detailed on pages 64 to 68 of your agenda. Leslie Crichton once again will present it, and it's the first time I've seen it. It'll be fantastic.
So I will take the report as read, but just in case anybody wants some background to this, we do collect contributions from developers towards towards our reserves and upkeep of those reserves. What we haven't been doing is determining where those contributions have been received from, and therefore actually applying those funds to those areas. So this, what this report does is to reconcile that, where the contributions have come from and where the spend has already been made or committed, and suggesting that we actually zone the contributions so that we can ensure that we apply those funds back to those areas.
Thanks, Leslie. We'll open it up for discussion. Councillor Hartwell.
Yeah, no, that's a great move. It's certainly pretty unbalanced in the area, especially down in our region down here. It's
Councillor Cogan.
I am in full support of it. I think any initiatives like this that we can use to more fairly even out where that money's going in specific areas. And I'd encourage us to be looking at other opportunities as well as this, going back out to our community. Yeah, so I think that's a great idea.
Councillor Davidson.
Just, where does the money actually come from?
So from developers, from subdivision?
Yes, yes, and what, anything else?
Maybe I could ask Fiona to speak to that.
Through his worship, yeah, they're subdivision contributions, so we don't have many contributions in our district plan, but the one thing we do have is a recreation contribution, which is to account for, in cities generally, you would take a section and that would become a playground or a communal area for the subdivision that's happened in that area. Over here, we have lots of open space and don't necessarily need more and more of those actual pieces of land. So instead we have a contribution that gets taken. It's called a reserve contribution by way of the account. It's a recreation contribution when we take it, and so it's for recreation facilities. And it's basically in lieu of there being a recreational facility provided for that subdivision.
Does it come from anywhere else, like mining or anything like that? Or?
No, we don't have mining functions held here at the moment. They're delegated to the regional council.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Neal.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure on this one, but we'll go off the slide. I just find that it could take away some flexibility, and if we wanted to put something in Hokitika, but we won't have access to the money from Ross or Kumara areas, even though they would still have quite a high usage of those facilities in the Hokitika area. So that was my concern. I think, yeah.
Francois.
No, nothing from me. Thank you.
Councillor Hart.
I fully support the recommendation because, as you can see, some are taking more than their actual contribution amount anyway. So I think to even it out would be fair.
Councillor Kennedy.
Yeah, I apologise for not being here for the report there. I think it's fair that where the money comes from, to some extent, it should be put back into that community. And I think it's plain to see it's unfortunate that the likes of Harsters seem to have had the shaft, essentially. And I think that needs to be righted in some way, shape or form. Thank you.
Thank you. It's just a question of fairness, really. Although I do share the concern of, well, it's not really a concern, just a comment from Councillor Neal. It'd be good to have a little bit of flexibility in there for occasions such as exactly what Councillor Neal says, because those close by outlying areas do have draw a lot on recreation and Hokitika as well. So, but other than that, it's fairness, so it's good to catch up.
And Deputy Mayor Brothers, support the recommendation, makes sense. Invite Councillor to move A, that the Council receives the report on Reserves Contribution Fund, and B, that Council approves using the community rating zones as designated zones. Councillor Hartsfield, thank you. Councillor Cogan, those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Thanks, Edward. Well done. The next item on the agenda is the speed limit review consultation document. approval document, and it's on pages 69 to 81 of your agenda. And it looks like Louis Sparks, Group Manager District Assets, is going to present the report. Thanks, Louis.
Thank you, Your Worship, councillors. Afternoon. I take the report as read. I highlight this report concludes by recommending that council approves the public consultation document. The consultation document contains a detailed list of all roads affected by the proposed speed limit changes and the reasons for this consultation. I've also invited our transport manager to answer any questions.
Thanks. We have arranged for the train to go through at slow speed today. We'll take the report as read and open it for discussion. Start with Deputy Mayor Carruthers.
No, I have nothing to add to it. The report was pretty self-explanatory, thank you. And the proposed limits seem to make sense. And there was clearly one or two, but on the whole, the general seems to make sense. So, no issues from it.
Okay, Paul.
Likewise, no issues.
Councillor Kennedy.
I do have a number of issues with it actually. And I'm not saying that speed limits shouldn't be. Current speed limit's 30. The safe appropriate speed, the current speed limit's are 50. The safe appropriate speed is 40. The mean speed is less than 30. So because of that, we're changing the speed limit to 30. Isn't that a problem that doesn't exist, Lloyd?
So the speed limit is adjusted to what the mean speed is being traveled through the section E lane. And that's the approach. And I can ask the transport manager to essentially
Yeah, so the reason we've gone for 30 in that context is it's more consistent with CBD style areas. So Franz in particular is high pedestrian use and in peak seasons, high traffic, very slow moving. But generally it's about sending the right message to the road users that this is what you expect in this area, this is how you should travel. So whether or not it's fixing a problem, the difference between particular high pedestrian areas, if pedestrians hit by a car at 50 kilometres an hour, they've got an 80% chance it's going to be fatal. If they're hit by a car at 30, their survival rate is 80%.
Yeah.
So it's quite different in that context. Yes, there may not be an immediate problem yet, but do we want to wait for it to become a problem before that? Or do we want to be consistent in our approach now and address it before it's too late?
Yeah, okay, that's cool. So if we want to be consistent, because the proposed speed limits throughout the district, you're going to be travelling 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 or 80 or 100. And that's very inconsistent, isn't it?
Not necessarily. It's also designed around the type of road that you were driving on and the conditions for that road.
Mm.
So many of our roads are actually lower width than state highways.
Mm.
So you've got a mixture of unsealed and sealed roads as well. So the argument there is what speed is the appropriate speed for those roads. When state highways are reviewing their roads at the moment, there's going to be a number of changes with regards to reducing some of those down to 8 k's. Some have already gone through, and others are 100 k's. Now, the message that we're sending, if we've got a narrower road on the state highway posted at 100, and the state highway is 80, there's no consistency there. So it's also around, it's around what you would expect to do. That's why the speeds that we look at setting around the mean speeds
as close to those as possible. So in general, people are driving on those roads at that speed. More often than not, you'll get visitors come through, they'll be driving with GPSs. These GPSs will tell them what the speed limit is through that area. Some people, not all, but some, look at that speed limit and say, okay, well, that's what I'm going to do. Do we want that on our networks?
It's up to the driver's individual responsibility, and if you're on the road, to don't trust anyone. And you say about consistency about, transit highways 100 and we've got roads at 60, or whatever it was. We've got a road, the Forks Operator Road, which I happen to drive very regularly as I live out there. It's a sealed road with a centre line, and the proposed speed limit is 60. Bird Road in Wataroa is a gravel road, varying conditions, and its speed limit is 100. How consistent is that? It's not on the list.
So it's not on the list.
Yeah.
It's probably one that we haven't considered at this stage, primarily because of the use. We've targeted a majority section of roads, but not all.
Yeah.
There will be another time when we look at all of the roads, but we've got to start something.
It's true, Your Worship. This is why we're going to have to consult. So if there are elements in roads that aren't actually on this list that should be on the list, we're happy to add them through the review process or submission process. So that's part of the reason we're trying to encourage consultant feedback.
I suppose what I'm getting at, I think there's too many roads on the list for a starter, and we should focus on the high-risk roads. You've said crash rate in Westland is very limited. Why don't we focus the effort on the sections of roads that have the highest risk? Slowing the speed limit's not necessarily going to make the roads any safer. It's like the road condition is the major part of the road, and I know it's, costs more, but so we do it now. Like, how much does a sign cost? This is the other thing that I wonder about. How much does a sign cost to A, replace the speed limit, and B, put a new pole in?
You're looking at about $150 a sign.
$150 a sign. Because, I see Franz Joseph change them all to 30K, off the state high. That's another, 10 poles or whatever it is. It's got to go in. So we pay for it now, or we wait, and there's funding available.
No, there's funding available now. We wait, there's still funding available.
Yeah.
It's not a matter of extra funding being available. It's being done with the system.
Yeah.
Allocations.
And I think it's in relation to the agenda item. The agenda item is to consider a document which we requested staff to prepare to go out to the public for consultation. And at the point that the consultation comes in, councillors will sit down, take the feedback and reach a decision, whatever that might be. But staff are following the direction that council gave them, and we've got to start somewhere. And I think it'd be unreasonable to think that they would get everyone right in the first document.
Oh, no, and that's fine, I suppose, in terms of the consultation document and all these roads, because there's a lot of them, we know that, and there's no real explanation as to each of these roads as to why you're changing those speed limit, and some of them very significant. That's about it. Cheers.
Councillor Hart.
No, I support the document going out for consultation.
Francois.
Yeah, no, I'm happy with it.
Councillor Neal.
Just a couple of little things on page 74, second paragraph. I think 2018 should be 2019, because then it makes more sense. I could be wrong. And one query I had was on page 78, Hauhau Road. I didn't go out and check exactly where you meant, but I'm hoping that it goes all the way past the transfer station, it will be slowed down.
So How Road runs from the East Town Belt through to the top of Blue Spur and then back down to Canary.
Yes.
So currently, there's a reduced speed on the first part of How Road. That's
Starting at the end of Hampton
So at the end of Hampton Street, so that's 70 kilometres an hour at the moment, that's sealed road. The piece that we're actually looking at this moment in time is the unsealed section from the top of Blue Spur Hill down to where it intersects with the Lake Road. So that's presently 100 kilometres an hour.
So How Road from East Town, from the bottom of Hampton Street going out past the transfer station isn't changing?
That's not changing. It's 17 now.
So I would really like to, and we can't wait for the consultation, but I'd really like to see that and what's right. That would be really good. And the schools, Park Street and Hampton Street?
Park Street and Hampton Street. So we've got Hobarton Primary School and the high school. We haven't looked too closely at those areas. There's a number of things that we need to do first before we do too much on live speed management, and that's in terms of changing the environment for the road to actually encourage a reduction in speed around those areas. Around some of the other schools, that's already in place.
Yes, some areas would be included in the
It's
CBD.
already a narrow area, Canary, it's a lot narrower and shorter. So there's those factors in. There are some changes coming in the next 12 to 18 months anyway regarding schools and speed limit schools. We can actually pick up those extra areas at the schools at that time when those changes come into play. So that's what we've looked at. Not too much at this stage, but we will be using.
Yeah, I'd certainly like to see the schools there. And I think, just to comment, Ryan, on what you were saying about the Forks Okarito Road, I think it's very different to Bird Road, even though it's tar sealed, in that it's got really high tourist use. And yeah, a lot more use than Bird Road, probably.
Yeah, for sure, I suppose. I just like a consistent approach throughout the district.
Councillor Davis.
Yeah, thank you. Have you had any other feedback from anyone else when you prepared this at all?
No, this has been made, a lot of the preparation has been based on feedback that we received from the trial. So we've taken that into account and included areas, changed other areas.
Sorry, the feedback from who?
Well, just general kind of feedback when we did the trials. So thank you.
Councillor Coe.
I actually thought that the way you've set out the table of proposed speed limit alterations is great. I thought that it explains where the roads are, the mean speed. You know, if you can, then visualise in your, I sort of went through all the ones that I was conscious that I knew of and then thought, yeah, they seemed very reasonable to me. However, there's a huge faux pas in there, I have to say. Codens Road does not have an H in it. So could you please address that? That's my own preference.
Very good point there, Councillor. Councillor Hartshall.
Yes, no, we need to do this to go out to the public to see what they think, but there's the odd one and you look at and go, oh no, that's far too slow, and then some of the ones around Frang's definitely need to be those UK. So that'll get sorted out through consultation, hopefully, but I think I might have to go to Gillespie speak before you change your speed. It sounds like a lot of fun in a number of goes.
Can we do that? Can we do our trip down there before then?
Thank you, Councillor. Look, would someone like to move that the council receives the report, and B, that council resolves to adopt option 1 and approves the speed limit review consultation document for public release. Someone to move them? Councillor Hartshorn, thank you. Councillor Hart, those in favour? Thank you. Thanks, Louis and Carl. It's certainly a comprehensive document. To the members of the public who are watching the present time, we're now going to move into public excluded. And on that basis, I'd like to thank you for zooming in, watching the meeting, and thank councillors for the way they've debated the various issues. Ask Diane to now